Hey guys, what is up? Welcome back, and it is the summertime. That's right, it's summer, no school, no classes, absolute amounts of free time other than working that I can spend writing music and creating content for you guys. I can't wait. It's going to be an awesome summer. I have a couple of projects that I want to keep you guys updated on. I'm really excited about them, and we're going to talk about them a little bit today. And this is just to show you guys the kind of process and my sort of workflow, I guess, of how I get these projects going. I decided to do this because I thought it would be cool. It would be a little different to show you guys sort of the behind the scenes stuff. Everything from arranging, composing, to finally recording stuff. We're not going to get to the actual recording today because these projects are still very much in their early stages. Without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so currently right now I'm working on sort of two big projects. So basically right now I'm currently arranging a Game of Thrones suite. I really wanted to do this for quite a while, but I think I was waiting for the show to end just to make sure that I wanted to get music from season 8 as well. So this is a little similar to what I did last year with the Marvel Strings medley. Basically, same sort of structure, 2 violins, 2 violas. The only difference is I've been thinking about it a lot, and I think that I'm actually going to put in some virtual orchestration as well, only because it's such a giant score that I'm not sure I can get the full quality of it in just a string quartet and a piano. There's so many different lines going on in Ramin Djawadi's score that I can't fit into 4 string instruments, and I'm kind of cheating already a little bit because I am doubling some lines at the octave, and I don't know about you guys, but I cannot play these kinds of octaves on the violin. I mean, it's possible. I'm not a violinist. I am a violist. And even playing octaves on the viola is very tricky. And for quality's sake, this is probably end up going to be 2 separate tracks. So one track is going to be this octave. The other track is going to be that octave. I know it's cheating a little bit, but you're getting the inside scoop into how I'm doing the same thing here. No way, even a very good violinist, still a little, I don't know, it's a little tricky, just where everything is at. And so right now, I'm kind of worried about the state of this, because currently we're at, almost 400 measures. We're 14 minutes out, and I'm starting to get a little worried, only because I wasn't expecting for it to be this long, and I still have about 2 or 3 songs to arrange. So I'm not worrying about it yet. I'm just going to finish the arrangement and go back and see what I can take out. The way I started this process is I got together a Spotify playlist. And for me, this is just to organize what songs I want to have in the suite, in what order. And it's also good to have these handy so I can play them, listen to them, and make sure I'm getting the right arrangement, the right notes, the right key, stuff like that. And so this is already a pretty lengthy playlist, and you're looking at the time codes here. That probably sums up to about 20 minutes. I'm currently arranging the Night King theme. So again, you see I have 2 songs left to do. Not sure if I'm going to keep this one, because some of the stuff in this piece is also kind of in this. So I don't know. I'm just going to arrange and then see what happens. But I've already had to take some out. I'm sorry if you love the Lord of Light theme. It had to go. Basically, I took it out because I didn't think it warranted its own section. And I don't want to put something in there if it's going to last for like 30 seconds. Because it's precious real estate when you're talking about a suite this big. So yeah, that's basically how the process started. And then I just went ahead and just started from the beginning. Basically most of this... Let me explain what I've got going on here. So basically, this is what I'm going to be essentially playing. These first 4 lines, violins, violas. Everything below it is going to be supplementary. So basically what that means is, unlike the Marvel medley, when it was just piano and strings, I'm going to go in and just put in some virtual orchestration as well, only because Ramin Djawadi's score is so big, and there's only so many lines I can fit within 4 distinct sections here. So I'm going to go in, and it also just calls for a wider palette of sounds. The Marvel scores, I love them to death, but they're pretty easy when it comes to orchestration. A lot of them have, save like the Black Panther score, a lot of them, strings, brass, percussion, piano, all of that can be sort of condensed into it. But you know, with Ramin Djawadi, he's got harp, he's got organ. I'm sure you guys know exactly what the organ is for. A lot of cello stuff, and again, I don't have a cello. If I had a cello, I would definitely be playing it. So the challenge is I don't have the lower bass line that I need to sustain a score like this. So some of these are going to be in the final product, and I'm also going to use some of my east-west sounds. Now you'll notice I haven't really orchestrated for much of this. The only one that I really sort of wanted to flesh out, as you can see here, it gets all crazy, is the Light of the Seven. Only because I just really wanted to orchestrate it because it's one of my favorite pieces. And yeah, that's mainly the only section that's gotten that treatment. Obviously here, working on the Night King theme, I definitely needed the piano to come in because, you know, the piano is so prominent in that piece that I didn't want to try to replicate it on strings. I'm going back and forth on whether or not I actually want to play this, like actual live piano and record it and sort of fit it into the video somehow, or if I'm just gonna let it play out. It really just depends. This project is going to be pretty extensive, and again, like I said, I have 2 more pieces to arrange, maybe 1, and then I have to go back and find some way to sort of condense it. I really don't want to go over 15 minutes. That's sort of my line in the sand right now. So I'm already kind of mulling over what I can cut out, what I can keep, what I can shorten. I don't really want to dedicate more than a minute or 2 to a specific piece. I want it to be a little even. That's also the main obstacle when you're writing suites like this, is making sure every piece gets its due time. And I'll also tell you another huge obstacle you have to overcome when you're writing suites like this is how you go from different keys, like one key to another. Thankfully, Ramin typically likes to stay within C minor, G minor, D minor. That I can work with. But there will be the odd, I know Aria's theme, Needle, the original is actually in B minor, but I think that's what I've done. I think I've kept it in D minor only so I can transition out of this section into that one. I know, a little sacrilegious. I typically, if I can help it, I really want to keep it in the original key, only because I think it's more recognizable that way. But I think I can get away with it with Needle because it has such a different, I don't know, like a different style, different language to it. He definitely used a different sort of compositional palette for this. And I think, you know, it's exotic enough that we can discern it even though if it's in a different key. Yeah, so basically once I've done the arrangement in Notion, this is my go-to notation program, by the way. Please sponsor me. But I've been working with Notion for 4 or 5 years. I think 4 years, and I can't say enough good things about it. The sounds are unlike any other. Yeah, so basically when I've done arranging, then I have to go back, fill in all of this blank space that I haven't done with Light of the Seven. If I need it. I'm not sure, you know, like harp, xylophone, and organ, I really only needed to bring that in for Light of the Seven. So basically I'm just going to use some of that cello and lower bass orchestration just to give it a little oomph. You know, you really need a bass with a score like Game of Thrones. So once I've done that, now it's time to go back and edit. So typically when I'm editing, I actually like to play along with each line. I don't have a viola currently, sadly. I'm going to be getting one soon. But I'll typically play along with the violin parts. And this basically sort of tells me, one, what is the best bowing? And it's a bit of a futile effort only because I always want to get the bowing very uniform in the video, but when I'm actually recording it, I don't pay enough attention to it. And so I'm editing the video and I'm putting the different parts together. I notice that I'm like going separate ways on my bow and I'm just like, oh, why didn't I not follow the bowing? I really just try to do most of the bowing as much as I can because it just looks better if the bows are uniform. Go back and do the bowing, and also if I can play it, to make sure I can actually play it. I mean, it's one thing writing all of this, it's another thing to actually play it. So that's my advantage of going back and like playing through everything and making sure I can actually play it and that it sounds good and in tune, because I want everything to sound its best. And so when that is done, basically I like to export all of these as audio files and put them in the Logic project, only because I like to play along when I'm recording. I like to play along to each line. That just helps with intonation and rhythm. And sometimes I will use the original files just to give the sound a little more texture. So sometimes I'll be using it. I'm pretty sure for this section, this is a section from the piece Bastard. And if you guys remember from Game of Thrones, this is basically that's from the episode Battle of the Bastards, where Jon is basically staring down the cavalry coming towards him, and it's just this lush sort of piece. I mean, this is really my only exception to keeping it short. I mean, it's a minute and 30. It doesn't look like a lot, but well, I guess it is just a minute. But that's fine, you know. I really wanted to keep that in there because I think that's one of the standout moments from the show. Yeah, so basically once everything's edited, everything is exported, I put it into my Logic project, and the tedious part is then making sure I've got everything lined up and synced up in terms of the tempo and the key signature. So basically what that means is, so for the Night King theme, it's let me zoom in here a little bit, quarter note equals 120. Before that, all this Light of the Seven stuff, this is the Jenny and Voltstone song. Basically, the Light of the Seven stuff and the Woods of Winter, that is actually not 120. Or maybe it is. Wait. I'm pretty sure it's not. Is this 120? Am I just lying? Oh, I guess it is 120. Okay, so it's 120. But you see, before this, it's a quarter note equals 70. So I basically have to go in, and all of these time signatures as well. I basically have to go into the Logic project and make sure every measure and bar lines up to not only the tempo, but also the time signature. And this is to help me when I'm recording to make sure that, one, I'm playing everything in tempo, and so that I can play along with the click as well. And if the click is not synced with what I've got here, then it's just a big mess for me to sort out. I think last summer I was working on a project and I forgot to put in like a 2/4 bar or something, and it just messed everything up, and I had to basically redo like a quarter of the project. So that was a little tough. And now I've kind of dug myself in a hole because I'm looking at, like almost 400. I mean, I think it's gonna cap out around 500 measures. So yeah, that's going to be a little tough. I mean, it's not too terribly time consuming. I don't have a lot of time signature changes, but you really got to make sure that everything is synced up. So when you go to start recording, you don't have to worry about any of that stuff. And so basically when I'm recording this stuff, I take a couple of passes at each line. Sometimes it depends on the project. Sometimes I'll go through the whole thing. I think with a project like this, I'm going to have to go section by section because it's just too much to play the whole thing. It's really easy to get fatigued. So when I'm recording, I typically don't like to do a lot of takes and then keep all of them and then go back and pick the best one. For me, that's just too time consuming. I basically do a take, maybe two, and then I go back and listen, and I make sure I compare it with the MIDI and make sure everything's in the right rhythm and in tune. And then I go from there and pick which one is the best. And if I have to do it again, I do it again. And sometimes, I will be finished recording and I'm going back and mixing and I realize something's really out of tune or something's not in tempo and I have to go back in and record it. But for me, recording 5, 6, 7 takes, having that like clog up your Logic project, and then you having to go back and pick the best one, to me, it's too time consuming. And this is already a pretty big project as well. So anything that I can do to boost productivity and save myself time, I do. Okay, so we're at that point. Everything's recorded. Everything's ready to go. So basically, you have to start mixing. And this is also a little bit tricky when you're talking about just stringed instruments. Stringed instruments, I think, are one of the most difficult instruments to record well. It all has to depend on the mic position. You don't want to get too close to where you can hear the actual bow on the string. Although Ramin does actually like that sound. I don't know if he does it on purpose. But I noticed in a lot of the cello stuff that he records and some of the violin stuff, you can hear the sound of the bow against the strings. You can definitely hear it in Light of the Seven. So and you know, it works. It's not a thing that you have to put up with. It's easily, you can get rid of that easily just by moving the mic further away. But then that's that whole different style of mixing when you have the mic away. You have to EQ it right. You have to get the right amount of reverb. And there are some sections in this suite that require some processing. This section, like we were talking about, the bastard section, I put tons of reverb. That's just a note for myself, only because that's what the original piece has. There's a lot of reverb on that single line, so I'm going to do that as well. Daenerys's little thing is also a little tricky. I have processed here only because my best guess is some of the stuff that one of the instruments that Ramin uses for Daenerys' theme is an electric cello. It's either an electric cello or a cello that is processed heavily. That gives it that sort of like oboe-ish, flute-like sort of timbre. Well, not really flute, but just a little. It's buzzy, and you know. So I've put a note for myself to make sure I do that, because I just want to get it as accurate as to the original. Because I think, at least when I'm watching people do stuff like this, I'm always paying attention to the detail that they put in, and I really appreciate it when they do. So I try to do the same for my own projects. So yeah, and then everything's mixed down, everything's recorded, and then comes the hard part, filming. Filming is difficult only because the longer the project is, the more difficult it is, only because if you mess up, then you have to start all over. Unless you can fit in some quick little editing trick, which it's kind of hard when you're doing what the kind of video that I'm doing. And it is playback. I'm not actually playing the stuff live. I'm not recording it live and recording the footage at the same time. I'm basically just playing along to what I've already recorded before. And you know, some people consider that cheating. Some people just consider that how you make music videos. That's how most music videos are made. But basically, if you completely mess up, there is a little mess up I did in the Marvel medley when I accidentally played the wrong line. I played the fourth viola line when I was recording the third viola. But basically, I kept going, and then I made a mental note to myself that when I'm recording the fourth viola, to play the third viola part in that section. And it turned out being okay. I just had to mess with the panning a little bit, but that was fine. And then so recording the footage is mostly the biggest challenge next to just putting the arrangement together. But after you're done with that, I mean, you're pretty good to go. And you put it on YouTube, and you hope people watch it, and you hope people appreciate your work. I don't want to say I do all of this for the views or anything. I really just do it because I just love doing this kind of thing, creating this kind of content. And you know, you can hopefully brighten someone's day just to sit down and listen to a suite from their favorite TV show. Okay, so the next big project I'm working on is basically a musical. And this is a rare sight, let me just tell you. This is a rare sight for my desktop to be this clean. I actually cleaned it up for the purposes of this video, mostly because I didn't want people seeing certain things on the desktop. A little confidential. But yeah, basically I've been working on this musical for quite a while, almost a year, I'll say like 9 months maybe. And I don't want to get into it in terms of what it's about too much. But basically where I'm at currently, I'm working on the music. I've already got some of the music ready. I say ready as in it can always change. I'm always doing rewrites or like I'm sitting down and I'm thinking, I don't know if I should do that. I'm gonna go back and fix it. Typically what I like to do, actually, you know, some people might think this is narcissistic, but I download MP3 files or just audio files onto my phone, and I listen to my stuff when I'm driving. And I don't mean that to sound arrogant or narcissistic. It actually helps me put the music in a different perspective and see if there's anything I need to go back and fix. So I've done a couple of demos already, and this is just me singing the stuff. We are not listening to that. But we can look at something. This is a song that I'm currently working on. I recently went back and almost kind of started over, only because it got to a point where I didn't like where it was going. Tom Hulkenberg, I think that's his real name. Some people know him as Jumpy XL. He said this one thing in a really good documentary about film scoring that I really love. He's like, if I don't feel, this is paraphrasing of course, but if I'm not personally affected by my music, then I can't expect other people to be. And I love that, and I completely agree with that. If it doesn't move me, if my music doesn't move me, how can I expect it to move other people? So it comes to a point, sadly it happens when you're a composer, that, you know, you're about like 4 or 5 minutes in. I mean, with this kind of song, it's just your typical sort of, I don't want to say ballad, but it's a typical Broadway song. So, you know, you're almost to the end, and you're trying to keep going, but then you're like, I don't know if this is working. And never delete it. That's what I want to say. I always save a version of it. I just title it old version of whatever song. And then, because, I mean, you know, you could be feeling it in the moment, and then the next day you can be like, oh, wait, no, I think that can actually work. Let me go back and fix things. But with this song, it got to a point where I was like, I don't know if I'm liking this. You know, if I'm not liking it, what's the point of me writing it? So I got rid of, like... like maybe 60% of the original, and I kind of went back. I really liked the beginning. I liked where it started, and I just needed to go back and try to keep going with the song and find a different approach at it. So obviously writing songs is very different from writing compositional big orchestra stuff. For one, funnily enough, I think it's harder when you have just voice and piano. And I know that's a little weird, but I'm even cheating myself here. So I have 2 piano staves. This line is what the piano player is actually going to play. This line is just some orchestration ideas that I have. So I think here is going to be a violin and cello line. And that's just me to shorthand some of that stuff. I don't actually want to bring up a violin and viola patch, or a violin and cello patch, excuse me. It's just a way for me to jot down some ideas. And same thing here. That's probably also going to be cello and violin. You know, it's just to give me some options. So when I go back and I actually do have to orchestrate these, I can, you know, I've already written some ideas. Let me put that down and go from there. And that's sort of the difference between writing songs and writing stuff for big orchestra stuff. You have so many options, and in a way you kind of I always go back and forth on whether the difficulty of writing for orchestra is this way or this way. And what I mean is, if it's this way, it's the number of instruments that you have to find some line that is relevant to the overall idea. Or if it's this way, in terms of length and the work that goes into putting every note in every line and going and creating a cohesive orchestral piece. I think with this one, it came with this little piano idea, and that was just me fiddling around on the piano. You know, that's a pretty typical, you know, like, it's a pretty typical chord progression when you're talking about musical theater. But effective nonetheless. You know, my big, I guess, belief as a composer is that if it's effective, use it. You know, even if it is a trend or a trick that a lot of other people use, if it's effective to your music and the music that you are personally, you know, involved with, and you want to be moved by your music, then just use it. Who cares? You know, it's your music. You can do whatever you want with it. And let's see. Okay, so these lyrics, basically, this is my stand full of music stuff. So I basically have this handy dandy notebook, and this is where all the lyrics for this show go. It's nothing special, but you know, for some reason, my brain likes having lyrics first and then the music. When I started out, I was thinking, you know, obviously music first, and then I figured out the lyrics later, because, you know, lyrics are not my... I haven't really studied writing lyrics or anything. But funnily enough, it's almost kind of like writing poems a little bit. I'm not necessarily focused on the rhyme of it all, or the rhyme scheme. I'm basically just writing down, where's, here we go. I'm basically just writing down what I think the song should be about, what the character should be saying. And it doesn't always have to be rhythmically accurate or has to rhyme necessarily. Sometimes I will specifically be writing purposefully to make sure the rhyme scheme is consistent. But sometimes they're just narrative lines that I transform into lyrics later. So this first line, I saw a tower made of glass, and in the tower a princess looked below. And so that's the first line of this song. The first line of when I started sketching it out is, I met a princess in a tower made of glass, and I did what anyone would do. And from there, I got the first line of this song. And sometimes you'll get, I said, princess, why don't you come down to join the world below? And that's verbatim for what I wrote April 23rd, 2019. I do like to date these things so I can, remind myself that I'm on a deadline and I need to get everything done by a certain point. And look how much time you've wasted on one song. No, it's just for basically record keeping, and to pressure myself a little bit. So yeah, I'm really liking where this song is going. Again, I did have to redo most of it because I really didn't like where it was going previously. Little trick I like to do is lining up the chords. So this isn't necessarily what's going to be in the actual song. This is just me outlining the chords of what I want to do next. I think this is around where the chorus should start, or at least the bridge to the chorus. Yeah, and I've got, most of these songs are pretty much done, obviously except for this one. And then when I think they're at a point where I can easily be able to turn it in for people to actually look at, then I'll turn it into PDFs like this one. This one was the very first song that I started writing. And it's also the song that I had the most trouble with, only because it's kind of pivotal. It is the end of Act 1. And I know it's a little weird to hear that I started with the song that's going to end the first act of my musical, but I'm not so much worried about the order in which the songs are written. I think it can be a little, grinding a little bit, to try to go next song in its chronological order. I find it a lot more productive to just write the songs that you want to write. I wanted to start this musical with the idea of this song in mind, and so I started out writing this first song, and it's pretty much done. This actually took, I'm gonna say, like 6 months to perfect and just get right. And only time will tell. Until I get this in front of a couple of singers, we'll see if it actually works. I'm hoping it does. It's harder when you're writing stuff for musicals, only because you don't get an immediate sense of whether you think this works until you get it in front of someone. I guess that's kind of the same with an orchestra. I mean, you do get a sense of what it's going to sound like because like virtual instruments have progressed in quality so much in just the last 10 years alone that you get a sense of what it's going to sound like, and for the most part it's going to sound very similar to what a real orchestra is going to do, just less mechanical and perfect. But that's the beauty of the orchestra, is that every person, every musician, their intonation is just off by a couple of microtones, and we don't really perceive it, but that's what gives the orchestra that chorusing effect, that some virtual orchestras and most virtual instruments fail to do, because they have the perception that every note should be perfectly in tune, but we're none the wiser. We can't really tell the difference. That's just how our ears work. So yeah, those are basically my two big projects that I'm working on this summer. That Game of Thrones medley is hopefully going to be done. I want to get it done by the end of June, because I really want to dedicate July to the musical. I'm still working on the musical. I'm working kind of on them concurrently. But yeah, that's basically what I'm doing. Okay, I hope you guys liked that. Thank you guys so much for watching if you made it all the way to the end. I hope you guys learned a thing or two. Fellow composers, drop your comments down in the comment section and tell me your process, your workflow. I want to know, and I would love to talk to you guys about how I get things done. If you want to keep yourselves updated on all the content that I'm making this summer, feel free to go to my Instagram, my Twitter, and my Facebook. Sadly, Twitter and Facebook has been a little bit ignored, but hopefully I want to get things back up again this summer, just so I have a lot more places to talk to you guys. Thank you so much for watching, and until then, I'll see you guys later. Bye.